Hey folks, welcome to the afternoon session. My name's Frank Engley. I'll be your host for this event. And our next presenter, Darren Wiebe, will talk about the role of asset management in designing for the future. Floor is all yours then.
Good. Good afternoon, everyone. A little bit about myself first. I'm the founder of ASI Engineering. About 13, 14 years ago, I started with the utility developing out asset management from scratch in Saskatchewan. I'm from Regina. And from there, we started out with more or less a pad of paper and a pen and responsible for 40,000 assets and had to figure out where they were and what condition they were in and what to do with them, what standards to use, and developed that system over a period of about 8 years, and then spent a lot of time traveling across North America consulting for other utilities to teach them how to do asset management and help them kind of from the ground up to perform asset management. Spent some time with the government of Saskatchewan as the director of asset management there as well. And throughout that time period, learned that there's a big gap out there for asset management to really be able to help people. And that's what I did about 3 years ago. I opened up ASI Engineering and helping a lot of municipalities and other organizations across Western Canada to develop their asset management program. We're going to talk a bit about small communities today. So I want everyone to just imagine to yourself a small community. If you have a hard time doing that, just picture driving a couple hours south towards the US border and arriving at a town that has about 1,000 people in it, and there's been a declining population there. There's possibly been a lot of youth that migrated out to go to urban areas for post-secondary to a post-secondary institution. And these small municipalities have more infrastructure than they have a tax base now. The population's aging, and the age of the infrastructure is really getting to the point where it's at a point of needing replacement or needing renewals, but the staff there don't know what to do. This town in the picture here is St-Luda. It's an hour from where I live. Like, this is very common all across Western Canada, these types of municipalities. You can see all the buildings that are kind of no longer there on the left there. Roads turn back into gravel. This kind of a scenario is kind of what I've kind of delved into, and really, it's in a way it's almost broke my heart. A lot of these places really need help, and I've spent these last few years just figuring out how to help them. And the way they really need help is they need funding. So how do they get funding? You know, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities has grants available. How do we help them get those grants, right? So what do they need to get grants? They need good data. They need to have a business case. What do they need to do to get a business case? They need to know the condition of their assets. How do you get condition of your assets? You need to have an inventory. And the solution being asset management. This is what I've come up with, is like, this is how we can help these small communities. I mean, applying asset management to these small municipalities is really an opportunity for them to learn how to get grant money and be able to rebuild their communities. And figuring out a business model for these small municipalities to be able to have a business that does this and can help is this what this presentation is a bit about. It's really how to help these people in these areas. So we're going to do a quick overview of Canadian infrastructure. We're going to look at small communities. Where are we now? The role of asset management in these communities and designing the future. This is really how we can help these places. And it also applies to larger communities, but really delving into these small areas is an area where they need a lot of help. The state of Canadian infrastructure, we're going to just talk about infrastructure assets, Canada's infrastructure expansion, and the age of our infrastructure. When we're talking about infrastructure assets, we're talking about transportation, water, wastewater facilities, parks, recreation, natural assets. Just after World War II, we expanded a lot here, the baby boomer years from the 50s to the 70s. There's a significant growth in Canada. Along with that growth came the expansion of our infrastructure, the assets, the systems that provide the services for all of us. And then for about 4 decades, there was an underinvestment in infrastructure. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities has a report indicating that approximately 3.8% of Canada's GDP is needed just for the infrastructure to stand still. If you're investing less than that, the infrastructure is degrading at a rate faster than you're investing in it. If it's new infrastructure, that cash has to go into a reserve, into essentially a savings account, so that when it's time for maintenance and renewals, that you're applying, that you have funds for it. You're not needing loans or depending on raising taxes and things like that. But was that done? Not really. There's about 40 years of underinvestment in infrastructure in Canada that's been well documented. And then there's this tipping point. So Canada's become aware of this in the last 20 years. There's been a new bank opened, Infrastructure Canada Bank, and a lot of grants, a lot of our tax dollars go to grants to municipalities now. They allocated $180 billion over 12 years, and they're continuing to create grant pools of money for municipalities as there's a significant infrastructure gap. In a snapshot, over the 70 years, the growth in Canada is 14 to 40 million. The infrastructure proportionally grew. Approximately 60% of our infrastructure is over 40 years old, and almost 30% is over 80 years old. So it's really reaching that end of life. And ask yourself, what's typically the focus in organizations or municipalities or really anywhere you go? Is it the ribbon cutting new asset, new construction project, or is it the existing maintenance of aging infrastructure? It's typically, as we know, the focus is on the new sexy project. That's the big capital teams. That's your big departments. Then you got 1 or 2 guys who are working in maintenance in most of these communities. And maintenance just isn't sexy, so it doesn't get the attention. We know there's an infrastructure gap. We know there's a major funding gap. And there's a focus on new. Small communities, where are we now? So we're going to look at the demographics, population declining, youth migration, and current practices of, these are observations of current practices of asset management in these areas. Statistics Canada categorizes a small community as under 30,000 inhabitants. There's just over 5,100 communities in Canada, and over 4,800 of those are small, 94%. Some statistics showing that there's been declining populations. Shows for about 20-year period here, the areas in orange, heavily in the prairies, and also other areas around the St. Lawrence region and the Maritimes have had declining populations out of these rural areas. That means infrastructure was built for a larger population that's currently there, and the tax base is less than what's needed. And the youth have migrated with a focus on post-secondary and sending our kids to college. A lot of young people go to urban areas where there's post-secondary institutions. That's great, but it definitely leaves these smaller places with that skill set gap. The population gets older there, younger people, they start families and things like that in larger centers, and they don't return back and bring those skill sets back to these areas. The areas in red here, again, mostly in the prairies, but it's spotted across the country, show youth migration out of these areas. Some of this probably is commonly said throughout the last 2 days here, but what are some of the observations of asset management in almost any community? Reactive maintenance, fix it when it breaks. You know, planning ahead is sometimes very difficult, especially when you don't have a planning department and you're managing it all yourself. Lack of data-driven decision-making. Those are scrolls, those are maps. That's the water and wastewater GIS system of one of the towns I work with. We scan them for them, help them get their records digitized. But that's their record system that they're using for decision making. So essentially, what's remaining in their head, what they can remember is often what is being brought to the budget table every year. Cast iron water mains is a lot of that stuff in the ground still. Digging it up, that's what it looks like. a lot of breaks, a lot of patch repairs, and it's life cycling all at the same time. Corrosion is, in a lot of these towns, it's the entire water mains like that. One of the towns I work with, they've had, it was something like 60 water breaks over the last year, just constantly. They don't know what to do. We're helping them figure it out, but it's difficult. 94, so summary, 94% of our communities in Canada are small, often with declining populations. Of course, not all of them, but many of them, with youth that migrated away, and their infrastructure is deteriorating. It was a lot of it built in just after World War II, 60, 70, 80 years old. It's at a tipping point. All right, so asset management, what role does it play? How can this asset management model help fix this or provide a solution to this? I'm not trying to think or say that asset management is the only solution for some of these things. There's probably there's many other ideas that could be generated, but not something that I can do with my hands. And asset management is, and this is what I'm using as a tool to help these communities out. One, acting with urgency, and then some of the basic steps of asset management: inventory, cleaning that data up, integrating technology, condition data, planning, and getting a business case in front of the government to help get grants. The deterioration curve of a lot of buried and above ground assets looks something like that. That blue line is just the increased cost when there's failures and the likelihood of failures, more or less 60 to 80 years of steel and concrete assets that are in the ground or above the ground start to deteriorate in these decades, depending on environmental conditions and a lot of variables. But at this time frame, this is when renewals and replacements are needed. So where do we start? Well, we got to know what we have. That's that inventory, of course. We got to get some standards in place: asset standards, inspection standards, maintenance standards, workflows. It'd be great to put all this information into a software so it's centralized, backed up on the cloud, that's accessible, and maybe prepared for the next generation. Mobile tools, many of them out there. It's the ability to do work orders, the ability to update your asset data set so that it's clean and it's accurate, and it's, when we're bringing it to budget or bringing it in front of a decision maker, that it's clean data, new data, like it's been updated. Got to get the condition of our assets. Age isn't enough. It's a starting point, but it doesn't tell the full story. And being able to build a business case, you need a little bit more than, I don't know, I think it's, this condition. Figuring out how to collect condition data is important. Getting long-term plans, maintenance plans in place. Getting training in for the administration, for the council, so that there's a team. Anybody kind of like this sometimes between administration and council and municipalities, and it's a big gap that needs filling. So working as a team within these communities to be able to apply for grant funds. It's a significant gap in our small communities. Most of these grant opportunities are competitive intakes. So the federal government, the provincial governments have large pools of money, often that go unused because there's not enough intakes, or that go to bigger centers that have engineering departments and help. Right? These small communities, they don't even know how to fill those applications in, or if they do, it's a paragraph of words, but these are like 17-page applications. That's how asset management can help. But one, acting with urgency, getting an asset management system in place. It'll give better decisions and improve funding opportunities. Seems simple, kind of, not really. But how do we, now what do we do? So this is in theory, this is a good idea. So what are some ideas? So the next few slides are some of my ideas for opportunities to make this happen, implement it. I'm going to go through a few important concepts. One is called a consultant-led fractional asset manager. Another is called affordable asset management, smart technology. There's a little bit of talk on climate change and asset management and collaborating with insurance companies. Consultant-led collaboration. Think of this as the CAO and the foreman don't know the first thing about asset management, but they know that they're doing maintenance, but like, how do you get organized with it? Having like a part-time or fractional asset manager support these communities is something that's going to be taking off because they need this help and they can't afford a full-time resource. Like 80,000, 100,000 a year is a lot of money to these places. And if they had a full-time resource, who's going to train them? What are they going to get them to do? It's difficult decisions, right? So a consultant providing a fractional asset management skill set to support these communities is the concept here. They can help build the system. They can provide that professional service without the full-time costs. And they can be that continuous improvement regardless of staff turnover and council turnover. So that when new council, new staff come in, there's this asset management system being built. This concept has kind of two phases. One phase is like kickstarting it. That means that to get that inventory condition data into a database, to pull information out of the foreman's heads, because that's where most of the records are in small communities. It's in the gentleman's head who retired a few years ago, or he's going to retire in a few years. And to find that information, pull it together, get the inventory, get the software set up, get the standards in place, get some training in place, kind of like kickstart asset management. Okay, we can see what we have, what we own. There's some condition data. We can start managing this stuff now. That's a start. And then it's building that continuous improvement program for asset management in these communities over time. So like developing a roadmap of where are we going to go in the next 5 years, having this fractional asset manager help with the grant writing, do the grant writing, help with the capital planning, help integrate asset management through all the departments. I think we probably all acknowledge that asset management in a silo is the big problem. Integrating it throughout the organization, it's an organizational mindset. It has to be the way the organization does business, not a department that is doing it. It's essentially a lifestyle for the business. It's a way of doing business. So that's what the asset manager would support, that development of it, because that takes time and effort. So shifting to affordable asset management. So we talked about small communities a lot. We know that there's not much money going on around there. And this is kind of for all asset management, not just smaller communities. But we're not designing new when we're doing asset management. The engineering needed for the data that's needed, we don't have to collect data. We only want to collect the data that we need. So looking at the end result, what decision are we going to make with this asset, and then looking backwards and saying, what's the minimal amount of data we need to make that decision? Sometimes it's a picture. We don't need 30 columns on a spreadsheet full of data on this pole. This pole has 80% material loss. It should probably get replaced. Like it was replaced urgently because of this finding. But you don't need that much data. And having too much data costs more money, and it usually shocks or freezes decision makers or the people analyzing it. And we're trying to streamline asset management. We're trying to collect just enough data to make sure it's usable for decision making. Software. So lots of softwares that are available for asset management. The concept of software in a smaller community is something like some software, say $30,000 a year. That's a lot of money for a small community. It's offensive to them. They think of things like anything more than a couple $1,000. It's like, what am I paying for? If you look at a small business, financial software, QuickBooks, it's like $100 to $200 a month. That's the premium version. Netflix, we all have that. It's about $10 a month. How do they do it? Why can't we create asset management software like this? It's really important because 94% of our communities in Canada need help, and it's a big hurdle for asset management. And having a comprehensive solution so that it's all kind of included into one is the other point there. Smart technology. So there's some great technology. AI is clearly here to stay. And integrating things like video capture with AI to do your inventory and condition assessment. These tools are available out there for a fraction of the price of traditional LiDAR or GPR systems that would collect your distresses on the road and deficiencies on the road to help decision making. There's a much more affordable way to do it. There is a wave coming. We need to shift towards using this better technology I'm not saying it's better, but technology that's better for decision making, because sometimes less is more. And this information and the cost of this is significantly less as well. Digital twins. So this is making asset management fun. Should have put that as the slide header. It's got to be fun. Like you want the foreman and the guys to use it. Got to make it simple, because you want them to use it. You can't have 15 clicks to get to something. You know, and it's making it so that it's, you know, building a model. You can put your floors in. You can put your, you know, sensors for water pressure or for the gas going into the building, so you can see everything on the model. You can build condition ratings into the building, so you can manage it all from, you know, desktop at a very affordable price. This technology is very available right now. Digital twins is not hard to get, not hard to make. Climate change and asset management. So world warming effect, the problems that are coming from it. This is a terrible memory from Fort McMurray. There are significant grant opportunities now and in the future coming for those that have a climate change adaptation plan and study. I work closely with fellows that work closely with the federal government to get these funds into municipal hands so that they can have climate change adaptation plans. What does that mean? That means we have to have an inventory of our assets, including natural assets. Natural assets are very important. When we have severe floods, droughts, wildfires, these 200-year storms that are happening more frequently, we have to be able to model our systems so that we can assess if the systems can have the capacity to take these types of weather events that may be coming. And there's grant funding for this stuff. There is right now, and there's a lot coming over the next few years. And if we can tie climate change and asset management together, which you can, there's opportunities for funding coming to communities for climate change and asset management. Significant amounts. Another one is asset management through the back door. This is something I'm working carefully on, but very hard on, is working with insurance companies. Because, you know, you got 400 people here that believe in asset management at this conference. But out there, like a couple percent do. You know, most people I talk to are still like, oh yeah, it sounds important. But like it hasn't caught on as great as we wanted to yet, right? But you know what everyone cares about is the money in their back pocket. Everybody does. So, just like we do for our vehicles, if our driving record is better, we're going to pay less insurance, so we're going to get a discount. Imagine insurance companies, if you have an asset management plan, you get a discount. If you have over, say, 80% health in your facility, you get a significant discount because the risk to the insurer is much lower. That's what I'm working on right now with insurance companies, so that we can get asset management in the back door through the insurance company. Very excited about this one. Some of the key takeaways, this is the end, this is the last slide. The state of the infrastructure in Canada is not that good. We're at a tipping point. Asset management isn't the solution, it's a solution. And let's look at designing the future, thinking a little bit differently and outside the box. I've suggested some ideas today about a consultant-led asset management system, making it affordable, using smart technology, climate change and adaptation, and working through the back door with insurance companies. Good, that's me. Thanks, everyone.
Well, thank you, Darren. Excellent proposition you make. Audience questions?
Thank you very much. So I think my question would be on the part where the consultant-led model, right? And we're also talking about sustainability. At what point, where does the hand-holding stop?
Yeah. This is the same question we would probably ask back to the municipality. When they're ready. You know, it's like asking a parent, when do you let your kid out of the house? Right? You ask me, I'll probably say 18 years old, my son's gone. But you ask the next parent, they're like, mid-20s, he's got to go to school. And we don't want, it's like that. It's like they need help, and you don't necessarily let them go until they are sustainable. What my company's doing is 5 to 10 year contracts. I think it takes a minimum of 5 years up to 10 years.
That you have in place, which is, the solutions you have there. But how then do we mitigate against a declining population and a workforce as well? So yes, they're going to get a refresh. Yes, they're probably going to get a replacement. But how do we get to the point where we have people how do you incorporate operations and maintenance costs to the upfront capital, right? Running it over the years. So how do we marry this situation to the point where, again, they're sustainable to take care of themselves to the children, not for us right now, not even the next generation, but the generation ahead of that?
Yeah, exactly. It's the problem. The solution is asset management over the long term. It's using a life cycle approach and training them how to consider all of that information. That's kind of more on the consultant-led model system, where you're training them over time to consider, instead of new acquisition costs for assets, you're looking at life cycle costs for assets, building that into their planning budgets and looking at money differently. It's life cycle, it's not acquisition.
Thank you for presenting this today. It's a really interesting topic. I've had the same conversation with friends thinking about this exact topic. I worked with the city of Calgary and a bigger asset management picture, but thinking of the exact lack of skill sets and capital to run small towns. And unfortunately, my conversations usually go in a much darker area of going, well, in 20, 30 years, any town under 4,000, I was thinking probably won't be around because of, like, is there a size of a town where it's just not feasible to start pouring capital into it?
Yeah.
Because let's say you got the grants, you leveled them up, and you got them where they're breathing, they're above water. Do they have the capital and the tax base to keep maintaining it? Or do they even have the skills to run a water treatment plant? Like, it's interesting to me that there isn't more towns that have contaminated water, because old John that ran it for years is gone, and who's taking care of it? And so in your experience, sounds like you got a really good snapshot. Is there a certain size town where you go, this is just not really even a good choice?
Yeah. It's a really good question. It's a holistic question, because you can't force people to move. At least I don't have answers for how people should maybe move into a more urban, centralized area. And I'm from Saskatchewan, so our story there is it's very fragmented. So we have rural municipalities, not counties. We have over 300 rural municipalities. Each of these rural municipalities is a small square or rectangle, and the province is Saskatchewan's divided up into over 300 of these. Each of these small squares have hundreds of kilometers of roads that they're responsible for, and maybe 100 to 200 people that are living in farms and hamlets that are paying some tax to these places. And are they able to sustain that? It's the question. There's too many variables, right? It's something I don't definitely have the answer for, but what I find is that like, this is where people live. Like these are, you go to these places, they're some of the best people because they're good old people, right? Who love their families, love their farms, and like they're not moving. So it's like, and they need the roads to get home and go to church and do their things. And it's like we have to figure out how to help them. And I don't know how to, pulling them all together to live in a more urban area is not gonna go well, I think, for many of them. So I'm not sure how to navigate that. But I know the people that I speak to are proud people, and they do know that they need to get ready for the next generation. And they are getting open to this kind of stuff, like even the digital stuff. Like one of the council meetings I was at lately, the one gentleman, 80 years old, was joking about TikTok and on his phone the whole time, and we were bugging him. And it's like they'll adopt some of this stuff. We just, just kind of helping do the heavy lifting for them to get it off the ground.
I wanted to ask if there's any consideration of the volunteer-led committees under PEMAC or other organizations around asset management. I'm on the AM for the public sector, and is there an ask or a support that those volunteer committees of municipal and private expertise can support an initiative like this?
That's a really good question too. So communities of practice, so AMBC, IAMA in Alberta, AMSK in Saskatchewan, those communities of practice are trying to do this. The one in Saskatchewan lost its funding in 2023 when the federal government cut it at that point after 7 years of funding it. And they were trying to get this training out there, kind of get this information out there. Right now, what they're doing is lobbying to the government to find grants to support these communities. One of the issues with where our GST tax dollars go is they go to there's a population-based formula as to where the funds get distributed. So CCBF is the Canada Community Building Fund, and based on your population, your center gets more money. So these places in say Alberta versus Saskatchewan, 4 times the population in Alberta, there's 4 times more GST money going into Alberta than Saskatchewan because of population. But the infrastructure, all these roads around Saskatchewan need it as well, right? So these non-profit communities of practice are trying to lobby against, essentially the bureaucracy of the government to try to change the formula on how money gets distributed from our GST dollars. It's a very complex. I can only talk so much about that stuff, but they are trying from the grassroots, trying to help out small communities and hold conferences and things like that before legislation comes, because we want to avoid legislation, what happened in Ontario.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I understand the fractional asset management model properly, because is it that let's say there's 5 municipalities and they all need help. Is the idea I come in, let's say you hire me, I'm 100 grand a year and I work for you as your fractional asset manager. Do I go into each of these municipalities and I try and pick someone to train them? Or do I deploy the system and I am their manager for, say, 20 grand a year each? And then, because I think the thing that is very attractive about that, if that is the model, is that gets over the continuity problem of that I train Dave quits, I train Jane quits, and it's 100 grand a time.
Yeah, it's the latter. So I kind of broke into 2 phases. The first phase is that kickstart phase where it's like you got to get the inventory and the information of the system and maybe get a database in place. And, that 3 to 6 months is like kickstart of the program. But what the whole goal is there is to integrate asset management as a system that is working throughout the administration and council, and the fractional asset manager is the coach. he's coaching it. And sure, he's doing a little bit of the work, so maybe the grant writing skill, he's taking that on for the first long time until they maybe get someone who's got good technical writing skills. But it really is a sustainable model where you want to teach and train these people, each of them, in the different departments as to what is their role in asset management, how do they, and really kind of rework the workflows, because I'm sure we all appreciate that asset management doesn't even work if you don't deal with the people first. So it's a people-led like change that's needed, and that's what the whole goal of that program is to integrate the system into the different people and departments so that it's sustainable and that the fractional asset manager can taper off over time.
Hi. So sorry to ask a hot topic, hot button type question. In your answer, you suggested that you didn't want asset management to be legislated, and that's fine. But I was hoping that you could speak to the benefits of it not being legislated and expand on that idea a bit more.
Of course, thank you. Yeah, I'm not a believer that the government's got it right, so I don't want the government to take over asset management and have an office that reviews our plans like they do in Ontario. I don't like that model. I would work against that model from an asset management optimist perspective. I think it's a communities of practice approach that we need. So it's building this community of practice within your local province, local county, and it's building it from the ground up. You don't want the government to from the top down, because then what people are going to do is they're going to buy asset management. They're going to go to a consulting company and say, hey, I need that report by November 1st because it's due on the 6th. And they're going to get a canned report, and it's going to satisfy a checkbox from a government. And that's not asset management. Asset management is a holistic change through the people in the organization, and it's a new mindset. So more of a grassroots approach is communities of practice. It's what this conference is, essentially. It's people that believe in the same thing that get together and talk about how to make things better in the future. And if we can create those, start from the province and maybe break out areas within the province of like chapters, just like other organizations will have, then we can start working more as a team.
Fantastic presentation. What's that on? Yeah, okay.
And no offense
Fantastic.
to anybody who works in the government here.
I work for the government.
I used to for many years. I know all about it.
Fantastic, incredible foundational information. Thank you for not doing an upsell of your consultant firm. However, your foundational information was amazing. I see your passion, and that really resonates with me. I do work for Defence Construction Canada, and our primary client partner is the National Defence. We're working really, really hard at collecting data on our assets or their assets, et cetera, and getting some asset management plans in place. What I see with many of the small communities that you're working with are very similar to military installations and bases all around, which are essentially small communities within a community. From the time that you are engaged from a municipality or in contract with them, and collect your data and output a basic asset management plan and something that can be maintained, and what does that timeline look like? I realize you can't paint every single municipality with the same brush because they don't have all of the same assets and systems, et cetera. However, just a general concept. Can you, within a year, 18 months, 24 months, get a decent asset management plan in place that can then be utilized to make effective decisions?
Yeah, the variable is how much buy-in that staff have and their relationship with their council. So the decision makers will slow things down significantly unless you have a great relationship with them. And it's almost a no-brainer starting point is like rebuilding that relationship. so that you can move decisions along faster. The work that we do is about urgency. So being able to work fast and being able to get this stuff up and running and going is kind of the point of a lot of this presentation, is that like it's not that, it shouldn't take that long. You don't need that much data. We have to go fast to get enough the information for what we need to make better decisions with. Most of the decision making right now, like I said, is made off of like opinions of the foreman, and this is the way we've done it before. I think that road's the next one that gets paved. Like it's very, you know, there's no backup there. Getting some, you know, enough information for the decision makers to make an informed decision, it shouldn't take that long. And that's why, for example, what we do is seeing the road assessment using AI technology. That's a $300 dash cam. We drive the municipality, takes like 30 minutes. The AI tool, within 24 hours of us doing audits, even from an engineer auditing it, does a full condition assessment of every road in a town within 24 hours. That's almost unheard of from a commercial perspective, but we're trying to bring that in, and it doesn't cost much. It costs a couple grand. Like a guy to drive around and you know, it's not that expensive. So we've seen great progress, and to answer your question, we've seen great progress in municipalities within about 9 months to 12 months for the ones that are gung-ho, meaning like we send them an email and 30 minutes back, they're like, here's the information you're looking for. The ones where their counsel and them are like joking about things during, you know, because they're actually kind of friends, versus like butting heads, which you see in the other 95%. So anywhere from 1 year to 5 years. But if there's commitment, it can go fast.
I have a question for you, please. So for the small communities that you work with, have you been faced with a pushback from the government, so the council saying, oh, when you're refreshing or getting a replacement for assets, we want like for like? Or are they open to smaller, something more effective or modular?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. It all depends. They're kind of forward thinking. Typically, the ones that are, say, believers in asset management, they're very open to like new technology, new materials, upgrading, spending a bit more upfront to get a longer life cycle. Like all of that kind of makes sense to the ones that believe in asset management. And we try to draw parallels to things like the vehicle and, you know, like looking after your house. How would you, you know, we try to draw common metaphors for them to say, okay, well, if you spend a little bit more upfront, but it lasts an extra 10 years, if you do your maintenance, it'll cost a lot less over its life cycle. The ones that believe in asset management get that, and most of them will be on that. You know, they'll outvote the other council members essentially. But that's not true with everybody. A lot of it is like, you know, lowest cost today is the goal because we were trying to save money for this fiscal year, and those hurdles that are still out there.
We have time for one last question.
Yeah.
Okay. Great presentation, Darren. Thank you. Do you typically just focus on the core infrastructure, or like where do you start and end? I'm getting a sense of that, but just to clarify.
Yeah, it's trying to work through where their needs are. So sometimes the needs, working in a town called Young right now, where their needs is the arena. They haven't used it for 7 years. They want to repurpose it. A lot of older facilities are going through a whole repurpose. Like, do we knock it down? Like, we're paying for power and energy in this thing, but we're not using it. What should we do with it? So that's actually becoming a focus of a lot of municipalities. But the main ticking time bomb is the water lines. It's 24/7. It's needed. Everybody expects the service level to be perfect. When you turn that water faucet on, water better come out. It'd be weird if it didn't. But like the way, like you heard 60, 70 breaks in a year, how many boil water advisories that is? And that wasn't a special town with a special bad soil. That's just like good old farming soil that we have in the prairies. That's probably a major one there, is as the water lines, but then it's based on the needs of the community.
Thank you very much, Darren. This is an incredible presentation that you've done. As one of the individuals who presented a question, your passion truly shows forth on this one to a problem that many of us who live in larger urban centers may not be aware of. And the one thing I just want to put down here or state here is that as PEMAC, one of the things that we're starting up is advocacy. And this is one of the kind of things where we as an organization can help others in either with government or others. But again, there is an advocacy program being started, and this is one area that would be a big support. Thank you very much.
Yes,
excellent
thank you.
presentation. And thank you very much, folks, for excellent questions. And don't forget the app and do an assessment or an evaluation update on how the program's going. And the next program will start at 4 o'clock.
Thanks.